Holy smokes.
Don't open that door. Oh no! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Tyler Great, as always. Today we're going to be reacting to scary videos. I decided we're going to do something a little different. You know, we're going to finally get back into reacting to things. So, you know, hopefully we can find some scary videos or whatnot. Before we get into it, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. And yeah, with the introduction out of the way, let's get right into it.
It was the Halloween of 2010. I was only 10 at the time. I was on the cusp of being too old for trick-or-treating, so I aimed to make the most of that night. My costume was of a cowboy. I'd learned from experience that the more detailed the costume, the more candy you get. I was going to hit every house that I could.
What?
I expected to get so much that I even brought one of those big black garbage bags to hold the candy in. I was going to make it a night to remember. It was, but not for the reasons I had hoped. I went alone because there were no other kids of my age going trick-or-treating. I knocked on each door and faced the same kind of questions.
Aren't you a little old for trick-or-treating? Oh, how cute. Never grow up.
Oh, nah.
So, I got very disappointed. I was running out of houses, and all I got was a bag of jelly beans and 2 Snickers. Not even a single big bar
Twix?
of chocolate.
Yeah,
I
like,
was thinking
what a
about
Twix
heading
at?
home when I saw this house at the other end of the street. It was the only house that had no Halloween decorations, not even a pumpkin on the porch. But the lights were on, so I thought to give my luck one last try. I walked to the house and knocked on the door. No one answered, so I knocked again. Coming! Whoever was inside sounded like he was in a bad mood. I once thought to run away, but his footsteps were so close that I didn't dare to move. I braced myself for something bad to come. The door creaked open and a bunch of fingers followed by a head peeked outside from the dark. It was a man, probably of my father's age. He stared me down and then said, "What do you want?" Trick or treat? Huh. Wait here. I was shocked not to receive.
Hey!
I started in Louisiana, and 32 years later, I've been here at Piedmont doing open heart surgery. We see so many complex surgeries.
This is ridiculous. Who said y'all could run ads while I'm watching scary videos? This is absurd. What even? Oh, I can skip.
Judgment at my age. He quickly disappeared into the darkness of the house and then came back with a big chocolate bar. The wrapper was a greenish yellow in coloration with unknown language written on it.
Oh, no.
But still, it was the biggest collection of my night, so I smiled.
No.
Here you
No. If you don't know the brand of the candy bar, don't eat that. Come on. That don't even make any sense. I mean, I probably would have took it because bro looks scary as hell. But as soon as I got home, right in the trash. I'm not eating that. No. I ain't taking no chances with that one.
Here you go. The man didn't wait for my reply.
Dang.
Feeling a little weirded by his behavior, I waited on the porch for a few more seconds.
Why?
I looked to my left and the man was standing near the window, staring into my eyes. I felt so scared.
I'm not eating that candy bar,
watch
bro.
me like this. It was as if he desperately wants me to leave. Because
then leave.
If I don't leave, he might have to do something bad to me. When I still didn't move, he opened the window enough for me to hear his voice and said, "Go home. My kid'll be back any minute. Go, now!" Feeling a sudden jerk in my body, I started to run. I came back to my street and was panting in fear. Kids were still trick-or-treating. I sat down on the bench on the sidewalk to take a break. I was sweating in fear. A few moments later, when I finally calmed down, I shrugged off the encounter with that crazy man. I took out 1 Snicker and started chomping on it. I needed some energy badly. Once I was done, I got up and threw the wrapper in the dumpster at the corner when I saw that man again. He was standing on the other side of the road. His eyes were big and they were searching for me. Among all the running kids, he was trying to locate me. I didn't want to get seen by him, so I quickly turned my back to him and grabbed my candy bag from the bench. I started walking to my house, which was at the end of the
Why are
street.
you built like
Each
that?
time I looked back, I could see the man still searching for me. When I left the crowd of kids, I heard running footsteps behind me. I looked back in horror, and the man was coming towards me at full speed. Oh no, he found me. I started running too. I looked back the second time, and the man yelled, "Stop! I won't hurt you! Stop!"
Nah, keep
But I
going.
was in no plan to stop. I would have reached my house if two kids riding a bike didn't come out from the left side of the road. They made me trip and went past me. I fell on the floor. I cut my jaw and got bruises on my knees. I quickly turned around to see that man standing right next to me. He crouched down over my face and snatched the garbage bag from my hand.
Why are you
He
taking my
emptied the
kid?
bag on my face, with the big chocolate bar hitting me last on the face. He took the chocolate bar he gave me and said, "This was for my son. You can't have it."
Well, then why did you
Then
give it
he
to
took
him?
out a Snicker and threw it
Okay,
at me.
oh yeah, there we go.
Happy Halloween. He gave one last smile and walked away, leaving in trauma and shock for life. I didn't come out the next day, not even when I heard the cops. I saw it all in the news and later heard from my parents. The man who chased me and took back his candy turned out to be the murderer of his little son. He fed his son poisoned candy as a gift for his Halloween. The news showed the half-eaten candy lying on the kitchen floor where the cops found the poor kid's body. That was my last trick-or-treating.
And that's why you don't mess with non-name brand candy. Pretty good. What? It wasn't very scary though, I ain't gonna lie. I was expecting it to be a lot more spooky. I mean, hey, rest in peace to his son, you know, that was tough. You know what I'm saying? It's like he had to go out like that. I don't even know why he killed his son, but you know, yeah man, that was tough. Creep warning, hopefully.
Trick or treat!
Hi, Jeremy. I didn't know you were going to be a dinosaur this year.
Do you like my costume?
Are you kidding?
There
I
is
love your
garbage.
costume. Say thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Robin.
You're most welcome. Now, let me get some candy for you. I'm going to give you the big bars because I love your Halloween costume the most. Don't give him too much candy.
No, I want the candies, Mom.
What kind of candy is that?
It's okay, Mrs. Donovan. After all, it's Halloween. Best time to spoil the kids a little. So what are your plans tonight? Attending any Halloween party? No, Mrs. Donovan. I think I'll just stay home tonight. Okay, have a safe night. Happy Halloween, Robin.
Happy Halloween.
Have fun, Jeremy, and don't eat your candy all at once. It might give you a tummy ache.
I won't.
You just gonna let your kid go home by herself?
Good night then. Good night, Mrs. Donovan. Be careful tonight. Don't open your door to strangers, okay? Don't worry, Mrs. Donovan. I'm a big girl. I think I can take care of myself. Of course you can. Hey, I'm back. I thought someone kidnapped you. Shut up. What? It's possible. Halloween is like the 4th of July for these creeps. Do you know how much the crime rate rises during this time? Oh, come on. Can we talk about something else? First Mrs. Donovan, and now you. Who's Mrs. Donovan? My neighbor. She was warning me to not open doors to strangers and all.
Wait, she's supposed to be a kid? I thought she was like
Remember
40
to
or
check
something.
through the eye hole first. Yeah, right. Because Michael Myers is waiting for me on the other side of the door. You never know. Enough with your crap. I'll be back in a sec. What the? Holy smokes.
Don't open that door. Oh no!
Wait a second. Is that a man dressed in a baby costume?
Do not open that door.
Treat.
Okay. Call the authorities.
I know you're watching me. Time to give candies to a trick-or-treater.
Oh my god, bro.
I'm gonna have to get an ad blocker. Cause, bro.
Who are you?
What do you mean? I told you I came for the candies.
Yeah, but you look way past the age for trick-or-treating.
Are you blind? Don't you see I'm wearing a baby costume? Can I get my candies now?
Nah.
God, just because you're dressed as a baby
Get off
on
my
Halloween
property,
doesn't
though.
make you
God
less of an
dang.
old creep. Now get the hell away from my house.
You should have given me the candies like you were giving to the other kids.
What are you? Oh, he finna break into the.
Robin, what's taking
He finna
so
break
long?
a window.
This man, dude, he was being so creepy. What man? I thought you were giving candies to kids. I expected to see a kid when the doorbell rang, but instead it was a grown-ass man dressed like a baby. Whoa, that's weird. Seems like the old dude just wanted to spook you. Told you Halloween is 4th of July for creeps. Yeah, no doubt. You didn't open the door, right? Of course not. Is he gone now? Well, I don't see him anymore. Good, just make sure to lock your windows too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I should go to bed now. Just want this night
Make
to
sure you
end.
lock them windows.
Fine, talk to you tomorrow then. Who's there?
Okay. But why is he posing like that?
How did you get in?
You should have listened to your friend when she told you to lock the windows.
Oh my goodness, bro. You're taking 5 hours to close the curtains.
Please don't hurt me.
Trick or treat!
Bro, you just... Did you fall? Oh.
Happy Halloween!
That was it. That was a little weak. I ain't gonna. I mean, like it got like one little jump scare out of me, but other than that, I mean, it was alright. You know. All right, let's get to the third one.
Nana Mildred is the reason I stopped celebrating Halloween. Chrissy Mildred, known to everyone as Nana Mildred, was the kindest, sweetest old lady in existence. She lived in a little green house at the top of the town surrounded by forest. There was a path that wound through the woods, all the way up to the hill to her driveway. I always felt somewhat unnerved being around Nana Mildred. Maybe it was the way she walked all hunched over, her arms bent at the elbows like a gorilla. She had gray hair that stuck out in all directions. She was so pale that I could see her veins under her wrinkled, dry skin.
Oh my goodness.
Her fingers seemed unnaturally long and thin.
You got a lot of reasons to be creeped out by her.
My mom took me to her. Her little green house smelled like lavender and mothballs, and the rooms were lined with photos of children. Some of the photos were in black and white or faded like they'd been taken many years ago. Are these all your children, Nana Mildred? She smiled and looked around the room.
These are all my lovely babies.
Afterward, as my mother and I walked down the path, hand in hand, I told her how amazing I thought it was that one person could have so many children. She just laughed at me.
They aren't her kids. Nana Mildred never had children of her own. Those were photos of other orphan kids she used to house.
Why does she have photos of those kids?
Because she raised them all her life and they all went their way. Is it wrong to carry her memories through those kids' pictures?
Have you been
That's
to
valid,
an
I guess.
orphanage?
No, it was in the city. She sold the place before moving here.
The rest of the way, we didn't say anything. The next day was Halloween, and it was my first year of going to trick-or-treating. My friend Spencer lived at the end of the street. Together, we planned to go to each house and collect as much candy as possible. When my dad dropped me off at his doorstep in my pirate costume, complete with an eye patch, black marker goatee, and stuffed parrot stuck to my shoulder, Spencer was already outside, sitting on the front porch. He was going as Thor. His fake long blonde hair was made out of his mother's old wig, which made him look pretty funny. And the expression on his face, I could tell he wasn't very happy with the outcome
I'm sure.
of the homemade costume.
That was ridiculous.
Hello, Elsa? Shut up, let's go. Once my father's car rolled out of sight, Spencer grabbed me by the arm and pulled me under this tree on the sidewalk. Listen, you have to help me pull something off. You mean your fake hair? Enough of your stupid jokes. Turner dared me to prank Nana Mildred. I got serious because Turner was our arch rival, and I never really liked Nana Mildred either, so I said,
I thought you did.
I was thinking to sneak inside her house from the back door while you keep her busy, and then I'll mess up her bathroom. What? You want me to talk to her while you do all that crazy stuff? Fine, I'll do it alone. Spencer started walking towards Nana Mildred's house. I saw him going up the winding road and never turning back at me, not even once. Once he went away from my eyes, I realized I can't let him walk into this situation alone. My brotherly instinct kicked in, and I started running up the hill. When I reached the uphill road, I saw Turner going to the backside of her house from the garden. God, he's gonna get us both in trouble. I slowly walked up to her and hid behind this big tree right next to her house. I watched Nana Mildred from her window. She was standing in the living room, pretty still. There was a table in front of her. Suddenly, she picked up a pumpkin head and placed it on the table. But before I could make out what she was up to, Nana Mildred lifted her hand, and what looked like a screwdriver grasped tightly, and she started stabbing the pumpkin in random, fierce motions. I've never seen an old lady having such strong hands before. As I watched her silently behaving like a psycho, I got goosebumps. Suddenly, she turned her head at the back of the house and she paused. I felt my stomach dropped. Did she see Turner sneaking from the back door? Nana Mildred walked inside the house and I got more worried. I tiptoed to her porch and peeked in from the window.
Jesus Christ.
Ah! I backed away screaming. Nana Mildred moved away from the window and now I could hear her unlocking the main door. I was so struck down by fear that I forgot to run away. She opened the door and eyed me from top to bottom.
What do you want, kiddo? Do you want the candies?
No. I just came to wish you happy Halloween.
I see.
Suddenly, I saw Turner crawling on the floor. Thinking he has managed to sneak inside her house, I tried my best to distract the creepy old lady. Nana Mildred, does any of your kids come to see you this Halloween? Her face went sad and she said,
They've all forgotten about me.
We stood there, maintaining this award silence for 5 seconds, and then Nana Mildred's face changed. She had this evil smile.
But you know what? I haven't forgotten them. I remember each one of them.
Just then, my eyes went back to
She must have got rid of them or something.
I realized something was wrong with him. He wasn't moving anymore. Just lay down on the floor like he had fallen asleep. Nana Mildred slowly turned her head towards Turner. There was no shock in her eyes upon seeing him. It was as if she already knew what will happen to someone if they tried to enter her house forcefully.
He will sleep like this for the entire night. Can you carry him home?
Nana Mildred opened the door and gestured for me to go in. I wanted to run away, but I couldn't leave my friend.
Oh, I would have left him.
I picked up, turned, and saw he was shot with a dart gun attached to the back door. Nana Mildred had set up a booby trap. After that night, we never went near her house.
Understandable.
Turner woke up with a terrible headache and body pain the next morning. He never pranked anyone after that.
Okay. I mean, those weren't really scary. They were definitely entertaining. All right, I'm gonna try a different person.
To give the context of where this story is based, I live in a smallish college town near a small to medium-sized city. The town itself doesn't have a lot of people and is mostly here to cater to the demand that comes from the college. Because of this, the stores around the college are mostly open 24/7 so that the college kids will be able to impulse buy whatever they like. The other big seller around here is gas. Of course, gas can be bought in the city, but being a town that is often gone through in order to get to the city, a lot of places will try to keep the price of gas slightly lower than any of the stations in the city. My story begins when I was working overnights at a gas station / liquor store when I was doing part-time classes in college, but mostly doing classes online so that they wouldn't run my availability for a full-time job. The store that I worked at had only one person working on overnights for a long time. Even though a lot of people, especially girls, would complain of the lack of cameras and the fact that you don't always get the best people going into the liquor store and gas station in the middle of the night. The owner's hand was forced on one night, before I started working there, that a woman who came in to buy milk went outside to her car, only for a man to come up behind her and shove a gun up to her back, then demanding her for money. She complied with him, and luckily, he let her go. She ran into the store sobbing hysterically, and though the police arrived shortly after, he was never found. I personally preferred to having two people on with me, even if there wasn't a safety issue. The night seemed to go by so much quicker when someone else was there, and it was really nice that the person I normally close with got along with me so well. Overall, there were 4 overnight shift workers: Josh, Nick, Dixie, and myself. Dixie had another job and was really only working there as a favor to one of the managers, so she would really only work about 2 nights a week with either Josh or I. Josh and I worked together about 3 nights a week, and Nick worked with Josh or I about 2 nights a week. Dixie was really nice and fun to be around, but she didn't really particularly like the job or really want to be there. Josh would get annoyed with her a lot for just standing behind the register while he did all the work, but it was only 1 night a week, so he didn't really complain too much. Nick, on the other hand, was a little bit different. He worked there 5 days a week, just like Josh and I, but they never seemed to play with more than one person 1 day a week. Nobody seemed to really like him or like working with him.
Bro,
Nick
like
was
a
also
zombie.
little off from the start. He was one of those people who basically told you his entire life story as soon as he met you, giving a bunch of really personal details that no one was really comfortable with hearing. One thing that he always seemed to talk about was the strain that was on his marriage. Apparently, he had a really bad drinking and drug problem.
Wait, this man got married?
And the drug part got better when he could switch over to weed, but he couldn't seem to get his drinking under control. He was hard to be around, but you kind of get used to the people in that kind of job being sketchy. I was there for almost 3 months when Nick's story seemed to escalate out of nowhere. He began telling people that when he was younger, he was diagnosed as a psychopath, and he had to take a bunch of pills for it every day so he wouldn't be violent.
And he got married?
Not exactly what you want to hear from someone you're alone with in the middle of the night, but okay. We all have our problems, and some people get dealt a really bad hand when it comes to mental illness. I myself have always really struggled to get my anxiety and depression under control, and without medicine, I mean, I wouldn't be killing people by any means, but I'd probably be hospitalized in danger to self categories, so as creepy as that was, I just assured them that a lot of people need to take medicine for some kind of illness, and as long as you stick with it and you're honest with medical professionals, there's no reason you can't still do anything anyone else can do. He seemed really pleased with this answer, and soon after, the subject was then turned to other things. He was especially cheery and nice to me after that for about the next week or so, letting me know daily that he was taking his medicine and he felt like things were really going well with them. I always answered enthusiastically, but I'm pretty sure everyone, especially Josh, was aware of how much I wished that he would just stop talking to me about it and would really just leave me alone. Josh had a wife and daughter who was about 2 at the time, so he couldn't help but to see us younger girls as kind of like his daughter and what she might have to deal with one day. He also seemed to go out of his way to end my conversations with Nick rather quickly, which I was really grateful for. And he didn't really try to pretend that he liked Nick. It wasn't too long before Nick had started conversations with me going into details about why I was diagnosed instead of how his medicine was working, which I won't get into because a lot of it was very violent and sexual. I told him repeatedly that I really didn't want to know about that, to which he would act like he understood and then change the subject, only for him to circle back to it about an hour later. When I confided in Dixie about it, she told me that she would take care of it. She later told
Wix is your platform to perform on. A complete portfolio solution means you can tell your
friend about it, which was the same manager who asked her to come work there. The manager said she couldn't really do much, since I seemed to be the only one that he would talk to about these things. It was starting to get increasingly tense for everyone working with him after he was talked to by the manager, and soon enough,
But why does he
about
keep
2 other
doing
women
that?
who had worked with him on the night shift reported comments that he made to them to the manager. I was questioned, in which I agreed that all of the statements made by the women were pretty similar to the things that had been said to me. Nick was then given a final warning and a write-up. The next couple of times I saw him, he would go on these rants about how the people that were reporting him only did it because they didn't like him. I assumed that he didn't know that I had been questioned too, and neither I or Josh had any intention to tell him. He got so angry at one point that he was practically in tears, saying how those lucky whores were really lucky that he was on his meds and what he would do to them if he wasn't. Luckily, it was about that point that his shift had ended, and pretty much as soon as he clocked out, Josh then told him that we had a lot of work to get done that night, so we really didn't have time to chat with him. He nodded and walked out the door without another word. Josh wasn't lying either. The truck had arrived extremely late that day, so there was still quite a bit of things that still needed to be put on the shelf. One thing that the earlier shifts never seemed to do unless they absolutely had to was stocking the drink coolers. It was true that it was easier to do at night when there was a lot less customers, so it was pretty annoying since we couldn't chat, but we just went with it. I can't really remember the time that Josh had went into the drink cooler, but it must have been pretty late since we had been there for a while at that point. I was still pretty focused on stocking all of the shelves and making sure everything looked full if we didn't have it, when the bell had chimed, signaling that someone had come into the store. I threw out a good evening and said that I'd be right there, since anyone that usually came in that late usually just wanted a pack of cigarettes or to pay for gas. I put down my box and went to the registers, slowing dramatically once I could see them. You guessed it. There was Nick, not looking at me but leaning over to my register. I'd be lying if I said I had a reason to be afraid. It did turn out he was drunk, but I wasn't able to detect it right away, as the smell of booze always seemed to linger in the air around there anyways. And Josh was right on the other side of the wall. Even so, I actually considered for about 30 seconds if I should actually go or if I should run into the cooler and go get Josh. Nick wasn't a young fit guy or anything, but years of drugs and drinking had really aged him prematurely and totally ruined his body. But I mean, he was still pretty intimidating to a 20-year-old girl. Unfortunately, Nick made the decision for me when, probably tired of waiting, turned right toward me, and that's when I noticed something immediately was off about
You need to scream for Josh's name or something to run out the door.
More than a pathetic whisper when I asked him what he wanted. He just stared at me. There was nothing on his face to tell me what he was thinking. I was about to speak again when he then spoke, barely intelligible because of his slurring.
Did he leave you alone?
It took me a second to shake my head and tell him in a hopefully steady voice that Josh was in the cooler, and then I asked if he wanted me to go get him. And once again, he was just staring at me in silence. At this point, I didn't even care what he said. I just wanted him to say something. The silent staring was really creeping me out. I then decided to ask with more force in my voice. What do you want, Nick?
There you go, yeah, stand on business.
As soon as I stopped speaking, he then grinned at me in a really disgusting, almost singing voice. Then he said,
You're lying. I know you're alone.
He laughed and then he took a step toward me but stumbled, allowing me to take several steps backwards. At this point, I should have just run to Josh. I should have called for him. Really anything,
why?
But I really couldn't believe that I was reading the situation right. I mean, Nick was really weird, but I had never felt like I was in actual danger around him. He had never come
Really?
off as more than a little unstable. He continued to come forward in slow stumbling steps, then saying,
Come here. I just want to talk.
I kept out of his reach, telling him to back off and that I would hurt him if I had to. He thought that was specifically amusing, and he laughed loudly enough that Josh had told me later was what caused him to look through the spaces of the racks to see what was going on. Josh was out the door in a second, and he seemed to come out of nowhere, then shoving himself in between Nick and I. They didn't even say anything. They just stared each other down before Josh then said in a really stern tone, "I think you should leave now." Nick just blankly stared for a moment, then scoffed, then telling us that we couldn't take a joke. I was trying not to cry at this point. The only thing more terrifying about the situation was knowing that if Josh hadn't been there and had somehow caught me, I would have stood no chance against Nick. Josh left me standing with my back against the wall, corraling Nick to the door. Completely unexpected on both of our parts, Nick then turned and then took a swing at Josh. Luckily, either because he was drunk or really uncoordinated, he missed Josh's face, and Josh then grabbed the back of his coat and then brought him down as he then smashed his knee into Nick's stomach or chest area. I'm not really sure which. He used the opportunity
he doing it again.
sputtering to drag him to the door and then throw him
Oh
out,
my
not
God.
blocking it. Josh had just turned and he told me to call the cops as we then heard the sickening crack from behind him. We both jumped and looked at the door to then find this really big circle of glass. It's hard to explain, but if you've ever seen a movie or one of an actual car wreck when something hits a windshield, but not hard enough to break through, and it turns wide all around the point of impact, that's what the door looked like. Josh didn't have to tell me what to do. This time I ran to the register, grabbed my phone, going to the corner farthest away from the front door, and then huddled on the floor. I didn't even notice at the time, but Josh had told me later that when he turned to see the glass, that was the first time that he noticed that Nick had a knife in his other hand.
Huh?
The fact that he tried to punch Josh instead of stab him is a mystery and a miracle. I was absolutely sobbing when the operator picked up the phone. I don't even know how she understood me. I was crying so loud. But between my distress and the sounds of Josh and Nick yelling at each other in the background with loud smashes of Nick hitting the floor, she got the urgency of the situation. She asked me where I was, and luckily she knew the address because just as I got up to look at a receipt to what the address was, the glass smashed. I dropped back to the floor and she told me that the officers were already on the way and to do whatever I could to get away or even hide, even if that meant that I had to leave Josh. The hole wasn't big enough for him to get through,
this man
but
tripping.
he made it by grabbing the ashtray from outside and then throwing it at the part of the window that he had been repeatedly punching, causing it to break through. He didn't make it to break through though. From that hole, he could reach the lock on the door, then get back inside. According to Josh, he had walked up to the door and then he put his mouth against the hole that he had just formed and then said something that even right now I still sob over. In that horrible sing-song voice that he used the first time I talked to him that night. He then said in such a happy tone,
They're never going to find you two.
Needless to say, as tough as he was acting, Josh was shitting bricks just as much as I was. He was older than Nick, in his mid-30s, but he was a beanpole, and he wasn't exactly known for his fighting skills. Even so, as soon as Nick unlocked and started to open the door, Josh then slammed his entire body into it, knocking Nick backwards from the impact. Josh then yelled for me to run, and even though my legs felt like they would give out at any moment, I ran right behind him to the receiving doors that were in the back of the store.
There we go, yeah.
Nick was cursing and yelling for us as the door jingle went off. Josh slammed into the back door, cursing in pain, as he then realized that it wouldn't open. We found out later that Nick had pushed the dumpster in front of the door, locking the wheels of it again before.
Wait, so did she get out or?
We seemed to both realize at once that he had actually planned this all out to kill us.
Oh.
Nick rounded the corner, still doing that awkward stumbling walk, though faster now. It at least gave me some time to slam the back room door shut and then lock it. I was sitting in front of it, Josh bringing over anything he could find to barricade the door shut, when Nick then finally reached it. He must have heard me crying because he kept calling my name, telling me that I wasn't who he wanted. He would make sure that I died before I felt any kind of pain if I opened the door for him. He then started stabbing the door, then screaming at me to open it. I screamed and then I moved when he stabbed it the first time, but Josh and I both then moved immediately to hold it shut again. I remember Josh and I making eye contact. We were both crying by now, and I wanted so badly to say something to comfort him, but I just couldn't think of anything to say. I was just as terrified myself.
This is a crazy situation.
I had dropped my phone when I ran to hold the door shut, and neither of us could move to go get it. So we really had no idea how long it would be until the police got there, and the door was made of wood, so it wouldn't really last long against his body slams. And there was absolutely no protection if his knife went into one of our hands. All I could think about was that I was going to die here tonight, that my dog would never know why I didn't come home, that I would never get my degree and have enough money to actually start enjoying life, that all of the plans for the future that my girlfriend and I had made would never happen. In the most anticlimactic and wonderful finish ever, it suddenly went silent. There was no police car alarms, no yelling, nothing. It was as if Nick had just vanished. Josh and I looked at each other, not even daring to breathe, then listening for any sign of life on the other side of the door. We both slammed to the ground when we heard a gunshot then go off once, then twice, then a third time. There was police and silence. Then at last, a voice rang out, then asking if anyone was here. We weren't really sure if we should say anything. Then the voice continued with his name and that he was an off-duty EMT who had been listening to the scanner. Josh got up and pushed all of the things aside in front of the door, opening it enough just to put his head out of it, and then it seemed like all of the breath just totally left him. He opened the door and went out into the store. I ran and grabbed my phone, seeing that the call had disconnected or the dispatcher had hung up. When I went out into the store where Josh and our rescuer was, he was in the middle of explaining how the police over the scanner were sending a bunch of cars, but that they were all pretty far away and he had a really horrible feeling that they wouldn't get there in time when the dispatcher was telling them what they'd find when they got there. He didn't want either of us to go outside until the police got there because though Nick had been shot in the shoulder, he still had the knife when he took off. The EMT said that he
you let him get away?
With the state that the store was in, he was really scared that someone in the store could be dying or hurt. The next 20 minutes were a total blur. Josh and I were just sitting on the floor hugging each other when the police finally arrived. The EMT had called dispatch and he told them of the new situation, and most of the cars that were coming to our location were then diverted to looking for Nick. It was soon after that Josh got to use his phone to call his wife, and she came right over, only bringing their daughter because he begged her to. He seemed to completely break down when he held his daughter and hugged his wife. I had an extremely similar reaction when I finally got to go home and came in to see my dog's wiggling body as he was so excited to see me. Nick was found about 2 weeks later in an old RV that he had in the woods. The reason that he had come after us was because he thought that the reason Josh wanted him to leave so quickly was so that he could call the owner again, and this time the complaint would get him fired. Unknown to us,
he definitely getting fired.
His wife had actually kicked him out about 4 days before this all happened.
Again.
And she was actually in the process of getting a restraining order against him.
How do you get a wife?
Due to a bunch of threatening texts and phone calls that she had been getting. Nick stated to the police that his job was all that he had left and Josh needed to be punished for trying to take that away from him. He said that I wasn't the target and he really didn't want to have to kill me, but he knew that he had a much better chance of killing Josh with me there than Dixie, since Josh would be more likely to face him to protect me. Neither Josh or I called an owner or even a manager over his comments that night, though maybe we should have. It was really disturbing what he was saying in hindsight, but we were so used to him being a creep and saying really horrible things that it didn't even register to us that he could be serious about trying to hurt someone. I had known him for 3 months and Josh had known him for 6, and he had never done anything violent toward anyone. Everyone just thought he was all talk. We also put faith in the fact that every employee had a background check on them before they were hired. So I mean, it's not like Nick had ever been violent before. Nick took a plea deal. He did this so that the 2 counts of attempted murder would be dropped, and instead would go to a mental hospital for offenders. The reason that I'm writing this story now is that I got a phone call about 2 weeks ago. It was basically notifying me that as long as there's no setbacks to his health, Nick is actually set to be released on June 8th of this year.
Bro.
When I called Josh, he said that he had received the same news the day before. Neither Josh or I work there anymore, and Josh has since moved away to another town on the other side of the city. I've switched to going to college completely online, and I'm in a new place that I'm renting with a roommate. I really don't think that he'll ever come after either of us. I don't see how he could blame us for what happened. I read so many of these stories, and after the fact, everyone always seems so prepared for what to do if they ever see the person they're writing about again. I really don't think that I'd be any more prepared to face them this time than I was back then. I've had some pretty intense nightmares ever since that day, but ever since I got that call, every time I close my eyes, all I can hear is that one sentence louder and clearer than I've ever heard it since it was actually said.
They're never going to find you two.
Nick, if it's really true that you were diagnosed as a psychopath, I hope you're getting the help you need. You already destroyed my peace of mind, and even now, years later, I never feel safe, especially at night. I'm honestly gonna do my best to move on from this, but I just don't know how. Wish me luck.
Alright, man, we gonna end it right there. Not very scary, but hey, I was intrigued. Like, bro, I was really into that. I was trying to see what was gonna happen for real. But none of the things that I watched were really scary or had me jumping out of my seat. You know what I'm saying? It was just like, I think I had like one jump scare. I had one, and that was it. These videos were definitely entertaining. Definitely not as scary as I thought they would be, but you know, definitely entertaining videos. I don't know. I'll see how this video does. If it does well, I'll do a part 2. Maybe I can find some even scarier videos. I know Meat Can has some pretty weird ones, but I don't know if theirs are really like scary. They're just more like uncomfortable. But yeah, I'm definitely sure I'll be able to find like some harder stuff, like some scarier stuff somewhere. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, turn on those notifications, and subscribe. And yeah, I'm Tyler Great, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.